Fun fact, John List lived for years under a new identity, blending into a completely ordinary suburban life.
So what you're saying is he didn't look like a fugitive. He looked like someone who reminds you about trash day.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Forensic Fails, Season 1, Episode 12, The List Murders. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kristin. Be sure to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a 5-star review and tell a friend. It will not only help ensure that you don't miss an episode, but it will also help ensure that others will find our show too.
And we now have a Patreon with 3 different levels. For just $5 a month, that's our Dr. Henry Lee level, you'll get our weekly pre-pod pod. That's our before show where we shoot the shit, give some hot takes, and share some moronic miscreants, some of the most ridiculous crimes and criminals you can think of, plus at least one bonus episode a month on a true crime or a true crime adjacent show or documentary.
And for just $5 more, that's $10 a month, you can join us at our Sir Alec Jeffreys level. You'll get everything we talked about at the $5 level, plus early and ad-free access to all episodes.
And the penultimate patrons can join us at the $15 level. That's our Peter Thomas level. You get everything we just talked about, plus you will get recognized by name, shouted out as a Peter Thomas level patron on our show and in our show notes.
To join our Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/forensicfailspod. And don't worry if you didn't write that down, we will have it for you in our show notes. Okay, so we are covering Season 1, Episode 12, The List Murders. This crime took place in November of 1971, and the show aired on December 12th, 1996. And when I saw that this episode was on the list for Season 1, I was so excited because this was a case that has fascinated me since the first time I heard about it. Maybe it's because it was just a mystery for so long. Maybe because it's somewhat local, because it occurred in New Jersey, or maybe because it's just so mind-blowing that it even happened. Whatever the reason, I have read and watched and listened to just about anything I could find about this case. So I might be a little critical today, but then again, when am I not? So our show opens with a classic Forensic Files black and white reenactment. We are in church. People are singing, and one by one, the camera focuses on members of the List family singing in the most dramatic way, some of them wearing incredibly bad wigs. And each family member, when they focus on that family member, it's intershot with crime scene photos of their body. So right off the bat, it starts off with a bang.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this reenactment portrays the whitest, most Protestant-y church I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. The church is physically white. Mm-hmm. The people inside are all white. Mm-hmm. No melanin for miles.
No.
And then we get a close-up of an older lady singing. I later learned that was supposed to be John's mother, Alma, but I could have sworn it was Frida Claxton, the mean old neighbor that Rose killed on the Golden Girls. And you could not have convinced me otherwise at the time.
Yeah, she was really into that song too.
Yeah, she was banging it out.
So Peter tells us that John List, patriarch of his family, spent 18 years evading the police after murdering his wife, his children, and his mother. 18 years. Now, even though I have read and watched a lot about this case, I was actually surprised that for the first time I was seeing some of these crime photos unedited.
Oh.
Yeah. So a lot of the crime photos that I had seen up until this episode were either faraway shots or like geographical shots, things like that. But these are like the actual police scene. You see their faces. It was definitely hard to
Mm,
watch. And seeing them, I just can't wrap my head around how a father can do this to his family. I know it happens, but
yeah.
still. All right. So John List and his family, his wife, his 3 children, and his mother, which must have been a treat, lived in a lovely Victorian mansion in Westfield, New Jersey. I'm not kidding. This was a mansion. It had a ballroom. Westfield, New Jersey was also home to Charles Addams, creator of the Addams Family, and the infamous Watcher, which became a Netflix series that really could have just been a 2-hour documentary.
Well, and this is also of interest too, because it is pretty close to home for us. Westfield is probably like a half an hour south of us, give or take.
Mhm.
Westfield is described as an affluent town. It is really quite nice. Like when you hear people are from Westfield, you're like, oh, Westfield. It's suburbia, but with a nice high-end downtown. For those not from the area like me and Kristin, Wikipedia describes it as, quote, a wealthy bedroom community of New York City within the New York metropolitan area, located 16 miles southwest of New York City. In March 2018, Bloomberg ranked Westfield as the 99th highest income place in the United States and the 18th highest income location in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town. I
Beautiful.
actually almost moved there
Oh, really?
for a hot second.
Look at you, how fancy.
Right? A friend of mine lived there, and she was getting married and leaving her apartment, and it was probably like my second year of teaching, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe I should move into that apartment." So I had actually given it a lot of thought, and again, it was my second year teaching, and that year I was given a pink slip, which is a very
Common?
thank you, common
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
for non-tenured teachers. So then I was like, ooh, I don't know if I could take that risk.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I didn't take it. But yeah, for a hot second, I almost
Oh,
moved to Westfield.
well, that's a fun fact.
Yeah. So we see a 1970s family photo of the lists. John looks like he has chronic constipation. There is nothing about him that says fatherly or approachable or anything like that. In fact, and this isn't mentioned in the show, but neighbors would tell the police that he was so uptight that he mowed his lawn wearing his suit. John was a 46-year-old accountant, and he looks like he's closer to 70 in that picture.
I honestly thought Peter was maybe dyslexic and the numbers were reversed. Maybe it was 64.
Right.
He looks old.
Yep.
I mean, I know everyone looks older in these old photos, but he looks hella old. I showed it to my wife yesterday and I asked her, like, how old do you think this guy is? She said, and again, she's like, when was this picture taken? I'm like, it was taken in the 70s. She's like, well, he looks like he's in his late 60s, but you're probably going to tell me he's in his 40s. So I'm like,
yeah,
you hit it.
Also, he wears glasses, but not serial killer ones. So he and his wife, Helen, they were married for 20 years and they had 3 children. 16-year-old Patricia, 15-year-old John, and 13-year-old Freddie. Also, Freddie looks like a Freddie.
Yeah.
His mother was Alma, and she lived in an apartment on the 3rd floor. And we see another photo of John looking just as uncomfortable as he was in the first, and are told that he was a devout Lutheran and taught Sunday school.
And I'm sure the kids in his Sunday school class not only did they love the fact that they had to go to Sunday school, but they must have just loved the fact that they had life of the party old constipation face as their Sunday school teacher.
When I heard that about teaching Sunday school, I just envisioned like Mr. Crabtree from Little House on the Prairie, the guy who took over teaching, and he like used the ruler.
Yeah,
and this guy, is a ruler kind of guy, smacking that ruler down.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So one day in 1971, the family disappeared. They were reportedly visiting sick family members and were, quote, out of town. But eventually the neighbors began to suspect that something was a little fishy. So they called the police because sometimes a nosy neighbor is actually a good thing. When police entered the home through an unlocked window, they were greeted by some weird music being played through the intercom system. Detective Bernard Tracy, one of the police officers who was there that day refer to it as, quote, funeral dirge type music, which to me is like that awful organ music that just has no melody, which is the exact opposite of what I want played at my funeral. In addition to the music being played, the police caught whiff of something. And that something, it was decomp. Somewhere in the house, a body was decomposing. And they soon find out it wasn't one body, it was 5. In the ballroom of the house, lying on sleeping bags, were the bodies of Helen and her 3 children. The sleeping bags were soaked in blood, and the pictures are incredibly graphic and very hard to look at. There was a blood trail on the floor, and the police surmised that the family members were shot in the kitchen and dragged into the ballroom. The killer was nice enough to clean up after himself, though, and we see a photo of a kitchen garbage pail filled with paper towels. Also, he double bags, which is good because you don't want any leaks. And there was a bloody mop in the sink. A search of the house led to the discovery of Alma dead in her apartment. She had also been shot. 2 guns and a letter to John's pastor were found in the den, and his handwriting is awful. And sometimes when I see a person's handwriting, I call it serial killer writing, and that is exactly what I'm talking about when I saw his handwriting. It's very rigid, it's slanted, it's sharp looking, it's just, ugh. Anyway, a voiceover reads parts of the letter to us where John basically confesses to the crimes and the reason why he killed his family. Apparently, he had lost his job, and due to the loss of income, he was afraid his family was going to go on welfare. You know what's worse than going on welfare? Familicide, John Boy. Killing your family.
Yeah, and that's quite a big jump, right? I mean, you don't go from having a high-paying job to welfare. So maybe you take a lesser-paying job, downsize. But he was an accountant. I have to imagine he had marketable skills. Though later we do learn about his history with jobs, and apparently it's not that great. Probably due in part to the fact that he just seems like such a joy to be around.
Exactly. Also, being the nice man he is, he was worried about the souls of his family. His daughter wanted to be an actress, and he was concerned that eventually his family would all turn away from the church. So here's where I start getting a little cranky. I have 0 issue with religion. 0. Worship what you want to worship who you want to worship. I have a very strong faith myself. I'm fine with it. My issue is with people who use religion as an excuse to be an awful person, like our boy John here.
Yeah, I wrote down on my notes, ugh, a religious fanatic. I, too, have 0 patience for anyone who commits horrible crimes in the name of any deity. 0 patience, tolerance, or sympathy for it. This really pisses me off.
Absolutely. His reasoning was if he couldn't save them on earth by killing them, he'd be able to save their souls, and they would go to heaven. And he wrote the letter after the murders, and he included details. Like it took his 15-year-old son, John, the longest to die, and he had to shoot him multiple times, which we see thanks to the reenactment. Ugh. Peter describes John as being, quote, riddled with bullets until John was satisfied the child was dead. He also writes, I said some prayers for them from the hymn book. It was the least I could do. What a fucking champ. I bet God was really smiling at that little gift he was given.
The least you could do, John, was not shoot your family to death. He can go shove that hymnal for all I care. What a complete loser. And why do all these religious fanatics forget about the 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill? Truly, though, he needed mental help. But unfortunately, I think back then, mental health services weren't as accessible, and it was also stigmatized, especially for men who needed to be quote unquote strong, right? And unfortunately, with religious fanaticism, therapy is often looked down upon. They would rather just pray the problems away, and prayer is fine. I am not putting down prayer or religion at all. But use it with mental health services, not in place of mental health services.
Exactly. So now the news is out and the hunt was on. Neighbors, and I always love when the neighbors chime in about the suspect, they called him odd, reclusive, with very few friends. Which, I mean, odd and reclusive could also be me. 2 days later, they found his car at JFK Airport in New York. It had a parking voucher dated November 10th. Now, this is December, in case we haven't mentioned it before. I don't even think Forensic Files tells us at this point, but it's December 7th when the family's bodies are discovered. And there's no record of John List flying out of JFK, so the police were pretty much stuck. A month had passed since the murders, and he could literally be anywhere at this point. So the police issue a nationwide murder warrant.
First of all, I'd actually have to just pause here and just say, I love the fact, Kristin, that you just inadvertently called the real show Forensic Fails instead of Forensic Files.
Oh.
It's that much in your soul now. We also, during the course of all this, see footage of the house. So the current house that sits at the address is valued at $3.75 million, 5 bedrooms, 8 baths. That always fascinates me when there's more bathrooms than bedrooms.
Right.
Anyway, an unknown arsonist actually burned the original house to the ground in August of 1972, and the current house was built 2 years later.
Yes.
So I'm not going into too much Zillow detail here because it's not the same house.
Right. Kevin August, he is the special agent for the FBI. He's here to tell us that this case was a top priority and information was sent to every FBI field office in the country. Everybody was looking for John Boy. Peter lets us know that ballistics confirmed the guns found in the office were what killed the family, even though they probably already knew that, considering List confessed to it in the letter. And the autopsies revealed, like it was a huge mystery, that the cause of death for each of the List family members was a gunshot to the head. And Peter asks us, where was John List? Captain Frank Maranka, and his Jersey accent is on fire, says that there were 2 thoughts. 1, John killed himself, or 2, he was living somewhere in the Midwest, which seems incredibly specific to me.
Mm-hmm.
Prosecutor Brian Gillette, wearer of glasses, but those cute round preppy ones that were all the rage in the mid-90s. I had a pair. I looked adorable in them, by the way. He tells us that List sightings were something people would report, kind of like Elvis sightings, but in my opinion, not as much fun.
Nope.
But here's what impresses me so much. Even though some people, specifically obnoxious authors who wear green shirts, might give up and consider this a, quote, cold case after a month or two, the authorities did everything they could to keep this case alive and relevant. We see newspaper articles referencing the 15th anniversary of the murders and how police were still trying to track List down. And then it happens. It's the mother of all crossovers.
I was not ready for this.
Oh, America's Most Wanted, hosted by the Mac Daddy of DIY crime solving, John Walsh. Now, if you are unfamiliar with John Walsh, let me give you a little background. John Walsh was the father of Adam Walsh, a 6-year-old boy who was kidnapped out of a department store in 1981. 2 weeks later, the head of Adam was found. His body was never recovered. John and his wife Reeve started the Adam Walsh Child Resource Center, which was dedicated to legislative reform. They eventually merged with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He lobbied for sex offender registries, and he is the reason that the code Adam is used in stores today. And then he became host to America's Most Wanted in 1988. This show scared the crap out of me when I was younger. It lasted for 24 years on Fox and is responsible for capturing over 1,000 criminals. This man is a badass, and he is a living, breathing example of don't fuck with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Peter Thomas tells us the quote, the television show America's Most Wanted has led to the capture of some of the FBI's most celebrated fugitives. I mean, I know what he means by the word celebrated, but I'm thinking the phrase well-known or notorious might have been a better choice than celebrated.
Yeah, I'd go with notorious over celebrated. But
yeah, like, yay, fugitive.
There's a little like confetti popping over them when they get hot. So anyway, The police, apparently all of them in Westfield, all watched America's Most Wanted, and they thought it would be a great case for them to showcase because somebody might recognize John List. And John Walsh is here on Forensic Files in all his coolness, and he lets us know that he said, "This is a guy I'd like to see caught." So they took on the case. Again, bad ass.
John Walsh really is so cool.
Yes.
And actually, he is the biggest celebrity we've seen to date on the show.
Mm-hmm. However, America's Most Wanted had a little bit of a dilemma. They would show photos of the suspects at the end of the episode. The only pictures of John List that they have are those crappy photos that we've been seeing throughout the episode that are, at that point, a few decades old. So they're now entering, as Peter calls it, quote, the highly specialized world of forensic sculpting. What does that mean? It means let's bring in Frank Bender. Frank Bender is a forensic reconstruction artist. He is able to take photos or skulls and recreate what the face of a suspect might look like in present time. And it's pretty fascinating stuff. Now, we're so used to AI or CGI doing all the work. This guy did it with clay, plaster, and paint. Peter calls it part art, part science, part intuition. Oh, Peter, your little bon mots are just so delightful.
I've watched a ton of Forensic Files over the years, and I have to say, I don't think we see much forensic sculpting throughout the show's run. Maybe we do, but I really don't recall it being used that often. Also, at some point, we see a shelf with a bunch of sculpted busts. And was it just me, or did the last one on the shelf look like Uncle Fester from the Addams Family?
Absolutely did.
Okay, maybe again, we have the Addams Family connection with Westfield here. But truthfully, I'm so drawn in at this point when he describes it as part science, part art, and part intuition. Especially with a cold case like this, I'm interested in how well he's going to do, actually, because I frequently will see like age progression photos that, to me at least, look nothing like the person when they're found. So I'm really drawn in. I'm really curious how this is going to play out.
Yeah. So to prove the point of just how talented Frank is, he tells us how he does this job. And he seems pretty badass as well. And we get this little, basically an anecdotal tale of how he reconstructed a skull, and the face that emerged in this sculpture that he created was identified as a girl who had gone missing. And this is another one of those careers where I wonder how someone decides that's exactly what I want to do when I grow up. But I'm glad those people exist.
Yeah, like, was he thinking this when he was in art school?
Right.
Yeah. But this is actually way more scientific than I anticipated. Once we see him describe his work, I was particularly fascinated by the facial thickness bit. Peter Thomas tells us that Bender refers to special charts that measure facial tissue thickness based on race, age, and gender. And then using these measurements as guidelines, Bender calculates the proper thickness of the skin in order to mold the shape of the face with his clay. And we see where he actually uses pegs of varying sizes on the skull to replicate the varying thickness. It really was quite fascinating to see come together.
It was. He gets to work, Frank, and he creates an older version of John List.
Okay, and I'm going to come in here with a little math. Just so we're clear, they needed to add 18 years to John List, which would make him 64, the age he actually looked at age 46.
Right.
So really, they needed him to look like a John List 82, which is a normal male 64.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A lot of math.
A lot of math. And he doesn't just create a clay statue, though. He tells us that he uses psychological profiles to help create the face, that he needs to get into the head of the person. Whether he meant that as a pun or not, I still kind of giggled when he said it. He worked with a psychologist and studied newspaper articles, pictures, life of John List in order to determine what he might look like in the present day. They determined that he killed out of anger due to his own failures, like losing his job. Frank also used photos of List's parents to help style the face, and it's truly fascinating to watch this thing come to life.
I also love how old school Frank is. He makes a
Mm-hmm.
comment about computer generated age progression, stating, quote, a lot of these computers nowadays will just add like 5 wrinkles because they're a few years older. I also love how he is not simply aging a face,
Mm-hmm.
but wants to get into that person's head. And he also looked at old photos of the parents, and judging by what we've seen of him and then his mother, this family doesn't age well.
No.
I hate John List so much that I enjoyed the fact that his bust got a receding hairline and sagging jowls. Take that, John List.
Ha!
Ha!
Finally, they decide on a pair of eyeglasses. And I know you're probably all thinking, why are their glasses such a big deal? Trust me, we're going to get to that. But it turns out the pair they decide upon for Statue John are big brown plastic frames, which Frank and the psychologist feel he would wear to overcompensate for feeling like a failure, that these glasses would make him feel powerful, like a great suit or something like that. They're like a status symbol.
I was actually wondering if serial killer glasses were going to be entering the chat at that point, but alas, I was wrong.
I usually pick my eyeglasses based on cost and how cute I look in them, and if they're going to hold their shape when I doze off on the couch. I don't wear them to intimidate people. P.S. The ones that I'm wearing right now, I bought on Poshmark for about $30.
Oh, very nice.
And Ray-Bans. And I brought them with me to my appointment to have my lenses put in them. Poshmark, not an ad, but should be.
Should be.
Should be.
Kristin,
Yes, Brian.
did you hear that noise?
You bet.
Do you know what that means?
Oh, I can't wait for this week.
All right. Glasses on?
Yep.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Glasses are on. Are the goggles on over the glasses?
Yes, they are. I am ready.
Perfect. And the lab coat is donned, correct?
Suited up, ready to go.
All right. So for this week's Forensics Lab, I wanted to go deeper into something this episode is built around, and that's age progression.
Okay.
And there are basically 2 ways investigators do this. You've got artists and you've got computers. And right away, it's worth pointing out, Frank Bender himself would probably tell you he doesn't need a computer to do this. And in fact, he kind of throws a little shade at them in this episode, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, which, to be fair, at the time wasn't totally unfair, but things have changed a lot since then. But let's start with the artist side. So when a forensic artist is doing an age progression, again, as we see in this episode, they're not just aging a face. They're actually building a hypothesis of that person over time. They start with the structure, the skull, the bone structure, the spacing of facial features, the way tissue typically sits on top of that structure. That part's fairly grounded in science, but then it shifts. Now they start layering in variables that are much less exact. Things like weight gain or loss, skin elasticity, hairline changes, again, which we saw in this episode, family aging patterns, which we also saw. Then it shifts into something more interpretive. They start making calls about the person. Do they take care of themselves? Do they try to make themselves look presentable? Do they disappear into a crowd, or do they stand out in one? And that's where it stops being purely anatomical and starts becoming something else entirely. Because now you're not just aging a face, you're really interpreting a life. And that's how you end up with decisions like the glasses, the expression, the overall personality that comes through in the sculpture. It's not just what they might look like based on a statistical age progression. It's how their insides might reflect on their outsides. Now, let's compare that to what computers are doing. And again, so a lot of what I just described, we see in this episode. We don't see what a computer might do. So modern systems, like the ones used by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which you made reference to earlier, takes a completely different approach. Honestly, they don't care about personality. They don't care about intuition. It's all about patterns. So they map out key facial landmarks: eyes, nose, jawline, cheekbones. Then they apply statistical models based on how human faces tend to age across large data sets. So things like skin sagging, fat redistribution, subtle shifts in facial proportions, all of that gets applied based on probability, not interpretation. So instead of asking, who is this person? The system is asking, what does a face like this usually become over time? And that makes it really good at a few things. It's fast, it's consistent, and it scales in a way a human never could do. I mean, we couldn't have, imagine if for every missing child, we had to create these sculptures, right? No way you could scale that. Which is why it's used so heavily in large missing persons databases. But the trade-off is pretty obvious, right? Sometimes the results feel a little flat. Technically correct, but not always recognizable in a real-world way. And I'm sure at this point, a lot of you are thinking, well, how is AI changing all of this, right? And that's where things are starting to move even faster. So older systems were mostly rule-based. You input a face, you apply known aging patterns, and you get an output. Newer AI systems are different. They don't just apply rules, they learn from data. They're trained on massive data sets of human faces across different ages, environments, and conditions. And instead of asking what should happen, they're learning what actually tends to happen in real life. So now you're getting systems that can simulate different aging trajectories, multiple possible life outcomes, that can generate variations based on health, stress, and lifestyle patterns, which is a big shift because aging isn't one path. It's a range of possibilities. But even with all of that, AI is still not truly understanding the person. It's recognizing patterns and how people change, not why they change. So where does that leave everything today? It's not really artists versus computers. It's more like a layered system. You start with the computer. It's fast, it's scalable, it's data-driven. Then the artist may come in, adds judgment, nuance, and interpretation. And more often now, AI sits somewhere in the middle, generating options, but not necessarily answers. So the computers are answering the question, what is most likely based on the data? Whereas the artist is answering, what would this person look like after years of life beyond physical aging? And the best results tend to live right in the overlap between those two things. So again, to this day, the best really are kind of that combination of art and science, again, with a heavy bit of assistance from a computer and AI. But both really do have value and are widely used today.
That was a lot. That was fascinating, actually. That might have been my favorite trip in.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right,
that was
good.
great. Very
Good.
I'm also like while you were talking, I was actually thinking about, photos of people and like filters being used and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that and how that's going to change like in situations. People use such heavily filtered photos of themselves, like on their social medias and
Oh,
everything like
God.
that, I hope they never turn up missing because by some of the photos they post, they might never be found.
Yeah,
They look
yeah.
nothing like what their photos on social media look like in real life.
True, true. Although perhaps too, since people are also, with phones, videoing themselves much more, maybe that could be helpful too, because we have
True.
more video of people kind of in their natural state, to see their, mannerisms and voice and other things. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating.
Yeah. I think everything is going to be, everything's changing so fast that, it's hard for us to keep up.
Yeah.
So it is now showtime for America's Most Wanted. And John Walsh is all business on May 21st, 1989, explaining to the TV audience that the case they're about to see is the oldest one they've covered so far on the show. And it all just seems very meta, watching a crime show on a crime show. Forensic Files was very ahead of their time in 1996. Thousands of miles away in Denver, Colorado, a family is gathered around a TV on a Sunday night watching Fox, probably just passing the time between 21 Jump Street and Married with Children, which honestly is exactly how I started watching America's Most Wanted. And then they realized the face on the screen, the updated aged John List, was their former neighbor. Dun, dun, dun. Wanda Flannery and her daughter Eva started listening to the facts. Accountant? Check. Lutheran? Check, check. We put it all together with the scar behind the ear. Sounds like a good bingo, kids. But if you're wondering, dear listener, what the winner, winner, chicken dinner moment for Eva was, it was the eyeglasses. Not serial killer glasses, but close enough for our case today.
Thank God that family in Colorado recognized Frank List, that fucking facha brute. She commented too. That means ugly face.
Oh, I know.
I know you know. She commented too that it was also the jowls, right?
Yes.
Frank Bender is amazing. I mean, he really is amazing. Think about it. The scar was known, but the jowls were an assumption based on how his family aged, and he nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And the glasses were based on an understanding of Frank's psyche. I mean, It truly is incredible.
Yeah. Wanda and Eva, but they knew him as Bob Clark, not John List.
And of course, he picks the blandest, whitest name. You know, John List was such a dullard. He probably stayed away from white rice because he found it too spicy.
Oh, Wanda, she calls the FBI, and she lets them know that Bob Clark, a.k.a. the family annihilator, John List, recently moved to Richmond, Virginia. So if they want to catch him, that's where they need to go. So they did, and they catch him. Kevin August, remember him? He was our FBI guy from earlier. He has the honor of slapping those silver bracelets on John Boy. They go to his place of employment, an accounting firm, and ask if he is Mr. Clark. Asks if he is Mr. Clark, to which he says yes. And when they ask him if he was John List, he says no. But he's got a scar behind his ear, and his fingerprints match the gun permit he applied for a month before he killed his family. And ran like a fucking coward into the wind. And Bob is John, and John is Bob. And guess what? The glasses on John are pretty much identical to the one on Statue John.
Yeah, and thank you also, New Jersey, for requiring fingerprints with the gun permits, because not all states do, which is wild to me.
Really?
Yeah, I looked it up. I was kind of curious if that was universal, but it is not.
Interesting. So the capture of John List made the front page of the New York Times. Peter's dulcet-toned voice tells us the story of John List's horrific crime and the whys of it all. He lost his job. The financial strain was getting to him, so he puts this plan into effect. When the kids left for school that day, he kills his wife as she ate her breakfast and then crept up the stairs and shot his mother. He drags Helen to the ballroom on top of a sleeping bag and cleans up the blood. He shoots the children as they arrive home one by one, but his son John puts up a fight and is shot 10 times. 10 times. And Peter tells us the List family morgue was now complete. Ew. I mean, I love me some Peter, but that statement was just all kinds of icky.
Yeah, and while all murder is cold-blooded, this was particularly cold-blooded. I mean, these killings individually took place over the course of a day. He had plenty of time to process things between the killings, and in those time gaps, there was clearly no, oh my God, what have I done? Which is just, I think, just speaks to just how horrible this truly, truly was.
Actually, not only, and I actually read this morning when I was, reading up right before we started recording, he ate lunch between the killings. And his youngest son, John, went to his soccer game that afternoon and cheered him on, and then drove him home and shot him as they entered the house.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. That's even worse.
And several days before, he actually spoke to his children about the types of burials they might want when they died. traditional dinner
Normal
conversation.
conversations.
Yeah. So this wasn't like an in the moment thing. This was
No.
methodical and planned out,
Methodical.
and
Yeah.
makes it even more disgusting.
Yeah, this was not a crime of passion.
No. So after he kills his family, he turns down the furnace, cleans up the mess, turns up the music, and leaves the house. Also, I hope, Brian, that you took issue with this reenactment house, because I have an issue with it.
I actually did not notice or take any notes on I was so engrossed in the episode itself that I kind of slacked on my usual critique of the reenactment sites and the job that the scouts do or don't do.
So this drove me crazy. So Breeze Knoll was a 19-room house, right? And he sets up the bodies in the ballroom of the house. It was a massive home. In the reenactment, it looks like he's scurrying out of a dorm room with a folding card table in it. And the bodies are in the scene. So you know this is supposed to be the, quote, ballroom. And if that's the case, this is the worst ballroom ever.
Maybe it's just a room where they stored balls.
Maybe.
So it wasn't actually that grand. That's where the kids just stored all sorts of balls.
I think your new shed is nicer than this room that they are.
It might be, actually.
Showing. In the time he was, quote, missing, he got a new social security number, a new job, a new home, and a new wife who, quote, never suspected a thing. List the liar said that his first wife had died of cancer and that they had never had children.
And his new wife, Dolores, and her fluffy 80s perm was in such denial.
They always are. The profile that Richard Walter, that's Frank Bender's psychologist BFF, delivered was pretty much on point with everything about modern day John List. And John Walsh's voice is filled with such disgust as he talks about John List. Eventually, he was found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison on April 12th, 1990, which happened to be my 15th birthday, in case anyone wanted to know. The judge said at the sentencing, John Emil List will be eternally synonymous with concepts of selfishness, horror, and evil, which is a fucking awesome way to begin a sentencing procedure. Richard Walter was thrilled that the merger between psychology and sculpture worked. Kevin August said the profile and bust were an invaluable tool. Frank Bender claims he just paid close attention to everything he learned about John List. And John Walsh gives all the credit to Frank Bender. So a few updates that occurred after the airing of this show. While he was in prison, John List filed an appeal claiming he had PTSD after fighting in World War II and Korea, which could have contributed to his actions. He also said that the letter he left for his pastor was a confession and could not be used against him because of, that religious rule.
Yeah.
Both counts were denied.
Good.
In an interview that he gave to Connie Chung in 2002, when he was asked why he just didn't kill himself, he said he was afraid he wouldn't get to heaven because suicide is a sin.
Okay, wait, can I pause here?
Sure.
But he thought he was going to get to heaven after having killed his whole family?
I gave that some thought. If you go to confession and confess your sins, you have a clean soul.
Oh.
Yep. Once again.
That's Frank List logic.
John
List. I'm sorry. Why did I say Frank? Oh, Frank Bender. Oh, my
Frank
God.
Bender.
Let's not confuse those two.
No.
Jeez. No.
So, by the way, John List, he's dead. He died of pneumonia on March 21st, 2008. And the Star Ledger, which is a newspaper here in New Jersey, referred to him as the boogeyman of Westfield.
Wow.
The bust of John List was donated by John Walsh to the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C., which is now on my list of places to visit. The case of John List and John List himself inspired episodes of Law and Order, the movie The Stepfather, and the character of Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects. There have also been several TV movies based on the case, including 1993's Judgment Day, the John List story, where List is played by Robert Blake, a man who was actually found liable for the wrongful death of his own wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley, in 2005.
Well, isn't it ironic?
Don't you think? And Dolores divorced him in 1989.
Finally.
So the List mansion, Breeze Knoll, it stayed vacant after the murders, and it burned down, as you said earlier, about 9 months later. The ballroom had a stained glass window, and it was actually not so much a window, it was a part of the ceiling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And it was rumored to be a signed Tiffany glass original, which was valued at the time at about $100,000. A new house was built there, as you said, and its current value is about $3.65 million. And there are a lot of trees in the front yard. Yes, I did do a Google Street search. And those trees are probably there to keep nosy people like me away. And in the show notes, I'm going to actually include a very interesting article about the original house.
Very nice.
I just find it incredibly interesting that that piece of glass in the ballroom probably could have saved that family if List had actually been a little bit more forward thinking. You know, he could have had that piece of glass removed, a signed piece of Tiffany glass. These are like the Tiffany lamps that we see, right? They could have gotten so much money for that, and it could have bailed them out of the financial things he was in. Apparently, he was also skimming money from his mother to pay like the mortgage of the house. He would pretend to go to work every day and hide out at the train station and then come home like he had been at work all day. What a dick.
Oh, man.
Yep. Frank Bender unfortunately died in 2011. And John Walsh, he is just still kicking ass wherever he goes.
You know, that got me thinking, because I didn't know that about the stained glass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would have really taken care of them for a while, because I just did the inflation calculator.
Mm-hmm.
That in today's dollars is roughly $830,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, this story could have gone so many other ways if this man had just, you know, grown some fucking balls. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't need a 19-room home.
Exactly.
You know,
right? He could have downsized.
You're not gonna immediately go into poverty, and guess what? There's a lot worse things. Like, this guy was acting like it was the end of the world, that, you know, they were struggling. Everybody struggles.
Yeah.
But not everybody kills your family because of it. There's a certain place in hell for people like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of this is definitely him wanting to keep up appearances, right? Like, I honestly feel like even the thing with the family, right, straying from church or anything like that, it wasn't about saving their souls.
No.
It was just actually just almost being embarrassed about, like, well, what will the neighbors think? What will the parishioners think at the Lutheran church?
I think it's more that, because this wasn't exactly a guy who had like a great social status in the community. You know, I mean, any recognition that family got was pretty much because of the children or his wife. It wasn't out because he was out doing great things in the community and people loved to rally around him and hang out with him. You know, he was probably the guy where if you entered a room at a cocktail party and he was the only one in there, you are making a fast getaway because you don't want to be caught in a corner with him.
Yeah, no. I mean, even though they are serving pigs in a blanket, no thanks.
And that's good stuff right there.
Yeah. All right. So this is the part of the show where we rate the episode on a scale of 1 to 10 DNA strands based on our assessment of both the investigation and the episode itself. I'm going to start off this week, and we have a forensic fails first. And that forensic fails first is this episode gets a 10 from me. I thought it was a fantastic episode. Not only is it an interesting case, I think the show covered it really well, in my opinion. Now, granted, I was not as invested in the case as you are. I was familiar with it, but I don't have the same knowledge of it. And certainly, there's always probably a lot of different angles and things that they could have gone down and things that were, left out for the purpose of time. But like for a 30-minute show, and which is really 22 minutes of content, right? I thought they covered it really well. I thought that I've been very critical of the episodes that we've seen recently because I felt like they were overly gruesome in terms of what they showed. While they did show some of those unedited photos of the crime scene, they didn't fixate on them and go back to them over and over and super close up on them or any of that stuff. The reenactments were not horrible, right? And I'm gonna give huge points for the investigation, right? I mean, Frank Bender is just such a hero and is so brilliant, and how he sort of, it was that kind of, as he said before, as that kind of triangulation of art, intuition, and science all coming together. And also, too, making good use of America's Most Wanted, right? So America's Most Wanted has done a lot of good over the years. At the same time, too, I think sometimes shows like that, whether they mean it or not, could be a little exploitative, right? And some people don't watch them for the right reasons, right? It's really just about,
the thrill.
The thrill. But everything came together here so nicely. And I think this show did a really good job of covering it. So for that reason, I am giving it my first 10 of our podcast.
Okay. So like you said, I'm definitely invested in this story. It's something I have read and watched and learned so much about. So I definitely went into this episode with a healthy dose of, what are they going to show me that I don't already know?
Right.
They did leave some information out, like the fact that John was a very sheltered child with a very overbearing mother. His wife, Helen, had been married previously. She was widowed with a child when she met John.
Okay. That was definitely left out.
That was left out.
They touched on the mother a little bit.
They also left out the fact that Helen was an alcoholic who had syphilis.
Oh.
Yes, which she passed on to her husband. They were married when she tricked him by a false pregnancy. So John wasn't as religious as he'd like us all to believe. But this information was left out. And I'm wondering if Forensic Files left it out to make him appear less sympathetic.
Yeah.
So there was that. Another thing I noticed about the show, and I am going to get to my score, is I've been noticing each week more and more links to this and CSI, the original CSI.
Oh, interesting.
That took place in Las Vegas. And I even mentioned it to my sister and wondered, if CSI found its basis in this show. There is an episode where they use a forensic artist to reconstruct a bust of a deceased person. And they show you with the pins, but they also brought in computers to do all that. So that's something I need to look into. But having said all that, for as critical as I am and as much as I had knowledge of this episode, the case behind this episode, I'm giving it a 10 because honestly, it's the best episode I have seen so far. There was not 1 minute where I wanted to stop watching.
Yes.
And like you said, to your point about the usage of the photos, they were graphic. They were insanely graphic. I did not need to see a dead child, but the impact that heartbeat flash of the photo had was so much stronger than constantly going back to the same pictures over and over and over again. Like the Dr. Wilson photos, where they kept dragging those pictures out. The way they described how Frank worked, I just thought was masterful. I love that he worked side by side with a psychologist to get into the brain. And the more he spoke, the more I thought, God, I wish I had artistic ability, because honestly, that sounds like a career I would love, you know? And then the dedication the police had to solving this case, that they never let it go cold. They constantly worked on it, even 15 years later, to bring this family some justice, and looking for ways they could solve it and going to the media for help. And then finally bringing in John Walsh as a guest star on the show. I mean, to me, that was just like, it could not get better. So I give it a 10, and which is awesome because, based on the list of shows, this is, I think, the last show we do for season 1.
Oh, is it? It might be.
I think it is.
Yeah.
So, we're ending season 1 with 2 10s.
Yeah.
Well done, Forensic Files.
Yeah, and I was wondering as you were talking, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if maybe she can give it a 9. I just feel like she's invested and has read so much that it's just going to be hard to not look at it with like a super critical eye and take at least one strand away. But I thought it was really when I was texting you about it, like how good it was, I didn't want to like give away too much, because I don't like, we really don't discuss our ratings ahead of time.
Right.
It really is a surprise at the end. But it was just a really, really well done episode. And I did not, to your point, I didn't lose my interest at any time. Like sometimes you're watching and it just gets a little bit like, boring, or like
get to the point.
Or sometimes the pacing of the show is like really off, but it was just, everything was on fire and on point this week. And there was they did not bring in any, kind of Greek chorus members that were unnecessary or annoying.
No, everything in this episode had a point.
Yes.
And there was nobody on the show that angered me, which is good.
Usually there's someone that enrages one of us.
Right. This is
no green shirts.
There's no green shirts, no derpy lawyers or anything like that. This was like people working together to solve a crime, as it should be.
Yeah.
So well done, Forensic Files.
Well done.
Confetti for you.
Done. Yeah, that's it. It was interesting then. I don't know if you noticed this, but after the episode, or yesterday, so the day before we were recording this, I just checked in on the Forensic Files subreddit, and somebody and I saw a picture of the bust. You saw that?
Yes.
And somebody made a comment that this episode is like the gold standard for Forensic Files storytelling. And I was like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm excited to see what season 2 brings.
Yeah, exactly.
I really am.
Yeah. After they've, kind of started, finding their groove a little bit more and figuring out a kind of a style and a
kinda
pattern
like
that
us.
works. Like us. Yes.
Kind of like us.
Aging like fine wine.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Forensic Fails.
Where the science was complicated, the narration was intense.
And the reenactments somehow managed to raise even more questions.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.